Good morning. It's Thursday morning. I don't know how we made it this far, but we did. And it's a beautiful day, lovely day. About 10 degrees below normal for this time of year. It's going to be like 84 today or 83. Maybe some rain later tonight and into tomorrow. But by Saturday and Sunday, it's going to be back up in the mid to high 90s again. So we have to enjoy it while we can. Now, my friends in Houston, I understand it was 100 degrees plus yesterday. So uh, that's a bad deal. Every time I come down there, I think, man, I don't know how I lived here. Well, I was used to it. Last time I went to preach a revival in DeQuincy, Louisiana, down close to Lake Charles. It was in September, but man, it was hot. And the preacher at the church, we were running around in his old pickup, and the air conditioner was out. We had the windows open, but I was just about to faint. And he looked over there at me and he said, "You look wilted." I said, "I am wilted. Let's get him someplace cool." So um, we're in chapter 11. We go to Tulsa tonight, and don't fret or worry about the old man. I've got plenty of company and help. Good morning, Shanna, my old friend. Happy birthday. And I've got Josh and Tyler are going with me. Of course, Josh. He's with me. We're together a lot. He plays the guitar and preaches. And he's with me on the podcast on Tuesday night. He comes from their church, from his church. Tyler is the sound guy at the church, and he's our production manager. Although he's pretty well past those duties on to Logan Crockett, who is able to be there because Tyler has been working on a big job that's about out of town. And it's hard for him to get back home in time for the podcast on Tuesday night. But Tyler is taking an evening off and a day off and going with Josh and I to Tulsa. We're going to have a big time. I'm not betting any money, but I would wager, if I did wager, that we would go to Velvet Taco, which has become Josh's favorite place to go in Tulsa. He doesn't even want to try someplace else because he's so happy with Velvet Taco. And so would you be if you went. It's wonderful. They don't even give me any money to say that. I ate a giant salad at Wendy's last night before I remembered the lettuce recall. And I got to think, well, the lettuce recall was 4 or 5 days ago. If they still have bad lettuce there, it's their it's their malfeasance and my misfortune. How about that? But I don't have the explosive diarrhea yet, except maybe diarrhea of the mouth. Maybe the Lord will protect me through this little happenstance, because I just decided, hey, I think I want a salad before I remembered about the lettuce problem. And Wendy's in Missouri was one of the food services that Taylor Foods supplied. Of course, there's no way of knowing whether they got any of the tainted lettuce or not. I mean, how do you know a thing like that unless you test? That's why they do the recall. They just want you to throw it all out and start over. That's what Velda would do with me. If we weren't so old, she'd just throw me out and start over. Well, we're in chapter 11 of Revelation, and I know we will finish today, or I feel confident that we'll finish today, because we only have 1.5 verses to really concentrate on here at the end of the chapter. And after this, after again, after the seventh angel blows his trumpet, and there's going to be another pause in the action, in the chronological action as we get into chapter 12. There was a pause in chapter 10 and through half of chapter 11 um, in the blowing of the trumpets. There'll be another pause after the blowing of the seventh trumpet, the third woe, and the beginning of chapter 12. Let's go ahead and get going here. I don't have to leave the house until about 11:45, but having new dentures, I have a new set of sores now because they made adjustments on Monday, and now I got some new sores, and I really like them. They fit so well. As a matter of fact, I'm giving you more information than you need to know, but they're fitting so well that I think I'm able to. I might be able to use them without any kind of adhesive or anything, which is a lot more comfortable, a lot easier to do. And if you can, it's one of those deals. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, there's no way to explain it to you. It's weird when you have to use the adhesive, and I've used it for 30 plus years, and so I'm really happy with it. But anyway, the dentist may call, and if they call, I'll just let it go to voicemail. But that would be the only thing I would have to do before I leave town today. So I've got plenty of time to be with you this morning, God willing. Unless the oxygen people call. This is Thursday. So who am I kidding? Anybody could call and derail us. So let's get going. Chapter 11, Revelation. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise and measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the court which is without the temple leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. Now, bear that in mind when we get to the end of the chapter. Because remember, the temple will be a temple will be rebuilt during the Great Tribulation, or it will be in the process of rebuilding during the Great Tribulation. The first temple, Solomon's temple, it was, it was big, it was grand, it was one of the seventh wonders of the world. But it all began in a tent. It all began in a tabernacle that God told Moses to build. I've always found it instructive. David wanted to build God a house. And God says, I've never asked for a house. I've never said anything to anybody about making me a house, but if you want to, okay. But David couldn't do it, Solomon did. Later on, the people of Judah wanted to go back from Babylon out of captivity and build another temple. And God arranged for them to do it. A wicked King Herod came along and made a lot of brownie points with his Jewish subjects and beautified the temple. A lot of improvements and expanded it. But God told Moses to build him a tabernacle. You know what a tabernacle is, don't you? It's a tent. When man wants to do something for God, I want to build you a castle, a palace, a mausoleum, a cathedral, a mosque, a Taj Mahal. I want to build something big. But when God says to build something, he says, pitch me a tent. That's what the tabernacle is. And then he tells Moses exactly how to do it and exactly what to put in there, because that tabernacle represented the throne room of heaven, the throne of God in heaven. So bear that in mind when he's measuring the temple here, the tribulation temple. Verse 3, and I will give power unto my two witnesses, And they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth, 3.5 years, 42 months. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them and kill them. We're going to talk about this beast in detail when we get to chapter 13, this beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit will destroy them and kill them. Verse 11, chapter 13 of Revelation. This is that beast he's talking about. He says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. That's the false prophet. And then the political, the governmental beast, the one we call the Antichrist. Verse 1, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. They worship the dragon. They giveth the power to the beast. That's who we're talking about. We're talking about the man who will be the Antichrist, fueled by and eventually possessed by Satan, the devil himself. You think that Satan doesn't enter into people, that Satan doesn't possess people, well, then you just don't get out much. Because it's pretty plain that we're living among demon-possessed people, even right now. John lying on the breast of Jesus at the Last Supper. Verse 25, he asked Jesus, Lord, who is it that's going to betray you? Verse 26, and Jesus answered, he it is to whom I shall give a sop when I've dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. And after the sop, Satan entered into him. And Jesus said unto him, that thou doest, do thou quickly. Now no man at the table knew for what intent he spake this unto him. For some of them thought, because Judas had the bag, that Jesus had said unto him, buy those things that we have need of against the feast, or that he should give something to the poor. He then, having received the sop, went immediately out, and it was night. And boy, howdy, brother, it sure was night. The same thing happens in Luke when he betrays Jesus to the priests. In chapter 22. Of Luke. Now the feast of unleavened bread drew nigh, which is called the Passover. And the chief priests and scribes sought how they might kill him, for they feared the people. Then Satan entered Then entered Satan into Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12. And he went his way and commanded with the chief priests and captains how he might betray him unto them. And they were glad and covenanted to give him money. And he promised and sought an opportunity to betray him unto them in the absence of the multitude. Our two witnesses, verse 7, chapter 13, Revelation. Chapter 11, verse 7, Revelation. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth up out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them and shall overcome them and kill them. See, it takes Satan himself to do it. And God only allows it because their ministry is done. Remember, they drew attention and were the air cover for the grandmother revival and for the revival and the great harvest of the 144,000 sealed. They were Jews, they were believers, they were Messianic Jews. They went all over the world, every kindred, every tongue, every nation, every people. They're all martyred for Jesus. See, now the work of the two witnesses is over. And so God lets them die. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom in Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified, Jerusalem. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another. Woohoo! Woo! Because these two prophets tormented them that dwell on the earth. They're going, ding dong, the witch is dead, witch, oh witch, the wicked witch. They're going to be happy, happy, happy. Just like the song about the flower girl. They'll send gifts one to another because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood up on their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. It's the whole world. Because the whole world watches them. The whole world sees them killed. The whole world sees their dead bodies lying in the street for 3.5 days. Now the whole world sees this. After 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood up on their feet. Great fear fell upon them which saw them. Good morning, Susie. God bless you, Pastor Susie. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud. And their enemies beheld them. And they're probably doing the funky monkey on their way up. Ya-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, ya-ta-ta-ta-ta. Look at me, look at me, 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 me. It's hard for me to do a raspberry with these new teeth. I'll get used to it. I swear I will. I'll think about it tomorrow. At Tara. After all, tomorrow is another day. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. The same hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000, and the remnant were affrighted and gave glory to the God of heaven. by the end of the sixth trumpet, the second woe, half of the people that were on the earth at the beginning of the Great Tribulation are dead. By the end of the fourth seal, a quarter of the earth is gone. That takes it down from 8 billion to 6 billion. By the end of the second woe, the sixth trumpet, they're cut by a third. That's another 2 million off. Now they're 4 million. Started out with 8 billion, now they're 4 billion. And here's 7,000 more dying in an earthquake in Jerusalem. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. Now here finally the seventh angel with the seventh trumpet, the last, the third woe. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders which sat before God on their seats fell on their faces and worshipped God, saying, we give thee thanks, O Lord God Almighty, which art and wast and art to come, because thou hast taken to thee thy great power and hast reigned. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come. And the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give us thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldst destroy them which destroy the earth. We covered that yesterday. I don't care where you stand on climate change. I don't care if you deny it. I don't care if you say, well, whatever's going on, the world will last as long as God wants it to. And that's absolutely true. But my case is this. With all the supernatural and natural phenomena that are going on the earth during the Great Tribulation, the earthquakes, on the earth, under the earth, in the seas, in the sky, all this stuff going on, there's got to be some kind of lead up. Everything just doesn't go to hell in a handbasket in an instant. There is a prelude, there is a prologue to it, and we're in that prologue right now. And things will get worse and worse until the rapture. Don't let anybody tell you things are going to be great. We're going to think they're good. No. It's not going to be like that. This is because I used to think it would be like that, because what Jesus said it would be like right before he came. He said people would just be going about like there ain't nothing wrong. Everything is fine. And he says in verse 36, chapter 24 of Matthew, says, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Does it mean that the world wasn't going to hell in a handbasket, as I said, or falling off a cliff, or disintegrating before their very eyes? No, because Noah was saying the flood was going to come. They saw Noah building the ark. They just didn't pay any attention. It was like today. There is nothing normal in the United States right now. I mean, I live in a strange country. This is not the country I grew up in. And the world is even weirder. And, fascism is on the rise, and anti-democratic forces are wherever you look. They want to destroy these people want to destroy everything that our fathers secured for us. Our fathers and grandfathers beat Hitler and Mussolini and Tojo, and they would have beat Franco too if he'd come out and fought. But he was such a godless, heathen coward hiding under the skirts of the Roman Church. He was as bad as Hitler or Mussolini, either one. But he isolated himself. He decided only to hurt his own people instead of hurting everybody around him. That's why he got off the hook, and he lived until the 70s. The old despot, the old dictator, just stood there like any other king. Our fathers and grandfathers destroyed fascism, and it's back. It's all over the world, and it's coming to a theater near you. But I digress. All I'm saying is that everything has changed, but people are walking around today like in the days of Noah, thinking everything's okay. Babaluba, things ain't okay. And I expect to see Jesus in the eastern sky at any moment saying, come up hither. Because it is almost time to go. I don't think we can get any closer to the tribulation without being in it. And if you're saved now, you're not going to be in it. So actually the time and the day make my case for me. People are behaving just like Jesus said they would behave. They're still going to concerts. They're still watching the World Cup. They're still following the pennant races, although there ain't no such thing as a pennant race anymore. You got divisions like football. They split up Major League Baseball so they could make more money with TV. But when I was a kid, you had the National League pennant and the American League pennant. There were no playoff games unless you got to the end of the season and the top two teams in either league were tied. Then they'd have a one-game playoff. Probably not good for TV revenue. And an American League team never played a National League team, ever, until the World Series. So we've come from that to what we got now. See, everything has changed, but people don't admit to it. Because if you see the change around you, you have to say why. But you keep pretending like everything is okay. And by you, I mean us. I do it too. We pretend that everything's okay. We go about our business like everything's okay. But the night is coming when no man can work, so we need to work right now. We need to redeem the time. Jesus is coming soon. The reason I know it is because Jesus said he would come at a time when people would pretend they play like everything's okay, and it's not okay. Because the people in Noah's day, they were playing like it was okay, even though they had every possible warning. But they didn't pay attention. I bet you when it started raining, they paid attention. I bet there were more than a few people knocking on the door of the ark trying to get in. But Noah couldn't have let them in even if he wanted to, because God sealed the door. And that's what the rapture's going to be like. He's going to call us up and he's going to seal the door. And the next day there'll be plenty of people knocking, want to get in. They'll just have to wait. He'll take them, but not on the ark, not in the rapture. But he will take them. He will never turn anybody down. Now let's look at verse 19. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. What the seventh trumpet does is it announces the coming of the seven vial judgments. It announces the coming of the next set of judgments. And there accompanies that announcement, the blowing of the seventh trumpet, lightnings, voices, thunderings, earthquakes, great hail. If you go back to chapter 8, um, when the seventh seal is opened, at the beginning of chapter 8, there's also accompaniment of voices, thunderings, lightnings, hail, earthquakes. Chapter 8, when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of an hour. And then the next thing that would come would be the trumpet judgments. But there's also some other things accompanying that opening of the seventh seal. The trumpet judgments would come, but something else happens. And I saw seven angels which stood before God, and to them were given seven trumpets. In chapter 16 and chapter 15, they're going to be given seven vials after the blowing of the seventh trumpet, you see. The seventh seal initiated another set of seven judgments. The seventh trumpet will initiate another set of seven judgments. Another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which is before the throne. In the Holy of Holies, you would have the golden censer, the incense altar, and then the Ark of the Covenant, which represents the throne of God, the mercy seat. And the smoke and the incense, which came with the prayers of the saints, ascended up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and earthquakes and lightnings and earthquakes. And the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared to sound, and they did. So that opening of the seventh seal set up and initiated the seven trumpet judgments, accompanied with fire and lightning and great voices and earthquakes. The same thing here. When the seventh angel sounded the trumpet, the third woe, and it says that there were great voices in heaven, the kingdoms of the world, but then it's also accompanied in verse 19 with lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. And then at the beginning of chapter 15, you see after the parentheses of chapter 12, 13, and 14, after that, another parentheses, you will see, and I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, seven angels having the seven last plagues. See, the seventh trumpet introduced the last set of sevens, the seven last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. But there's going to be another parenthetical section of chapters 12, 13, and 14 before we get there. But that's what these seventh events have in common. The seven seals announce the seven trumpets. The seventh trumpet announces the seven vials. And when the last vial is done, the end of the wrath of God is filled upon the earth, the very last one is done. And the very last one, I'll just give you a preview. And the seventh angel, verse 17, chapter 16, Revelation. And the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple in heaven from the throne, saying, "It is done." And again, there were voices and thunders and lightnings and great earthquakes. It's going to be an earthquake that they're going to be the greatest one that's ever been on the earth. So now we have the seventh trumpet, the third one, last woe, announcing the seven final judgments, the vials, the bowls of wrath. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the first part of verse 19. The temple of God was opened in heaven, and there were seen in its temple the Ark of the Testament. God told Moses to build a tabernacle, and he was supposed to base the tabernacle on heaven. And the Holy of Holies would represent his throne room. And he says in Hebrews chapter 8, they're talking about the priesthood of Jesus, the perfect priesthood, because he ever liveth to make intercession for us. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer the gifts according to the law, who serve unto the example and the shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to build the tabernacle, about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern. And the same thing with the ark, which represents the throne of God in chapter 9 of Hebrews. Of course, Jesus enters into the throne room of heaven, which represents the Holy of Holies, not with the blood of bulls and goats, but with the bull, with his own blood. And he says that, and this is talking about making the temple. I'm going to go back and look at that in just a second. Then verily, chapter 9, verse 1, then verily the first covenant also had ordinances of divine service and worldly sanctuary. And there was a tabernacle made, the first, wherein was the candlestick and the table and the showbread, which is called the sanctuary, or is called holy. But after the second veil of the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, or holy of holies, which had the golden censer, the incense altar, and it's of gold, and the ark of the covenant, overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had the manna, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant, and over it the cherubims of glory, the angels reaching out one to another with their wings, shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. That is the throne of God. But if you look back, it says here that, in verse 19 of chapter 11, Revelation says, and the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in this temple the ark of his testament. Go back to Exodus chapter 25. I think it's chapter 25. If it isn't, I promise we'll find it. It's somewhere in Exodus. I think it's chapter 25. But there's 40 chapters in Exodus. I know it's in one of them. I'm just kidding. I really think it's in chapter 25. Chapter 25 is a pretty long chapter. I want to read you just a little bit about the making of it. In verse 25, and the Lord spake unto Moses, chapter 25, verse 1, Exodus. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering. Of every man that giveth willingly with his heart, ye shall take my offering. And this is the offering which ye shall take of them: gold, and silver, and brass, and blue, and purple, and scarlet, and fine linen, and goat's hair, and ram skins dyed red, and badger skins. Badgers? Badgers? We don't need no stinking badgers. But apparently God did. And badger skins, and shittim wood, oil for the light, spices for anointing oil, and for sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones to be set in the ephod, and in the breastplate, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell in. Now here's the kicker, verse 9. According to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it. Because Moses is making a copy of the throne room of God in heaven. That's what the tabernacle was. And the temple was just a bigger version of that. God tells Moses, and he gives him detailed instruction in this chapter 25, but he tells him in verse 9, according to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall you make it. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to tell you how to do it, and you got to make it that way. Did Moses make all that stuff? No, but God filled Aholiab and Bezalel and Aholiab, he filled them with the knowledge that they needed to, as artificers, as craftsmen, to do all this work. Amazing stuff. You get to the last verse in chapter 25 about the instructions on what to make and how to make it and what it's supposed to look like. In verse 40, at the end of chapter 25, these instructions on the tabernacle, again, God says, and look that thou make them after their pattern, which was showed thee in the mount. Don't stray from it. Don't do anything I didn't tell you to do. And then the ark in particular. It says in verse 19 of chapter 11, and the temple of God, this is after the blowing of the seventh trumpet, and the third woe was past. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. Let's look at what that ark is. It says in verse 10, thou shalt make an ark of shittim wood, acacia wood. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and a cubit and a half the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. A cubit's about 1.5 feet, 18 inches, give or take. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold. Within and without shalt thou overlay it. And thou shalt make upon it a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them in the 4 corners thereof. And 2 rings shall be in the one side of it, and 2 rings in the other side of it. And thou shalt make staves of shittim wood, and overlay them with gold. And thou shalt put the staves into the rings by the sides of the ark, that the ark may be borne by them. And the staves shall be in the rings of the ark, they shall not be taken from it. Don't want to lose them. They're overlaid with gold. That's the way they carried the ark without touching it, you see. You're not supposed to touch the throne of God. And that's emblematic, it's symbolic of the throne of God. That's why it has the rings and the staves. You pick up the stave, the pole. You don't touch the ark. No touchy. For he that touches it shall die, remember. The staves shall be in the rings of the ark, and they shall not be taken from it. And thou shalt put into the ark the testimony which I give thee. The 10 Commandments, the law. And thou shalt make a mercy seat. This is the lid of the box. The Ark of the Covenant is like a box, a long rectangular box, and then there's going to be a lid on it. And thou shalt make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and a cubit and a half the breadth thereof. And thou shalt make 2 cherubims, angels of gold, of beaten work shalt thou make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat, and make the one cherub on the one end and the other cherub on the other end. Even of the mercy seat shall you make the cherubims, the 2 ends thereof, and the cherubims shall stretch forth their wings on high, covering the mercy seat with their wings, and their faces shall look one to another. Toward the mercy seat shall the face of the cherubims be. And thou shalt put the mercy seat above the ark, and in the ark thou shalt put the testimony that I shall give you, and there will I meet with thee. So this is a picture of the throne of God. the cherubim that's standing behind, standing over the throne with their wings spread. This was the job that Satan had, if you can believe it, when he was still Lucifer. He was created. He was the most beautiful of the angels, and he was blinded by his own beauty, and he didn't think that he was created. Chapter 28 of Ezekiel, moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation unto the king of Tyrus, and say unto them, Thus saith the Lord, Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, and the sapphire, and the emerald, and the carbuncle, and the gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in the day that thou wast created. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast in the holy mountain of God. Thou wast perfect in the days, in your ways, the day that I created you. But the multitude of thy heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. You see, Satan was created to be that cherubim whose wings are spread over the throne of God. He was the cherub that covereth. He stood with his wings spread over the throne of God. He was God's number one guy. He was God's man. He was the covering cherub. His pipes, his voice was like music. When he talked, music came out. He was like the song leader in heaven, the worship and praise leader in heaven, with his wings spread out over God's head on the throne of God, the anointed cherub that covereth. That was his job. And it wasn't good enough, so he rebelled against God and became Satan the devil. Wanda, good morning, sister. God bless you. So, Moses made a copy of what God's throne in heaven looks like, and that was the Ark of the Covenant. With the mercy seat on top and the cherubs that covered the throne of God, represented by the mercy seat. Verse 19, chapter 11, Revelation, and the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail, just like there was at the opening of the seventh seal, announcing the seven trumpets. Well, this is at the blowing of the seventh trumpet, the same lightning, voices, thunder, earthquakes, and hail, the same thing as the seventh trumpet announces the coming of the seven last plagues, the seven vile judgments. One thing I'd like to point out here, and I've made it as a joke before, but since we're here, I want to talk about it. There was a movie, of course, Raiders of the Lost Ark, 40 years ago or more. And it was like finding the Ark of the Covenant in a pyramid or something. The Ark of the Covenant ain't in a pyramid, it's in heaven. It was removed in Ezekiel 6-9 when the glory of God dwelt between the cherubim that were above the mercy seat. When he left, he took the ark with him. We know he did because it's in heaven. Now, why? And so, well, how do you know it's in heaven? Well, because it says so right here. It says, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. See, God doesn't need a testament for himself. A testament's for us. He doesn't need an ark for himself because he sits in what the ark is modeled upon. It's a model of the throne of God. What would he need with the model of the throne of God? This is the ark that Moses made. And it was carried up in the chariots of fire in the whirlwind when the Shekinah glory cloud left the temple in 586 BC before Nebuchadnezzar destroyed it. Isaiah wrote a vision of it. Ezekiel wrote a vision of it. You can read about it in chapter 6-9. The glory of the Lord departed. Ichabod, the glory has departed. God would not have a model of his own throne sitting next to the throne. He wouldn't have a copy of his law, the Ten Commandments, sitting next to his throne, or the jar of manna that God gave to everybody. What would he need with it? He's the one that made it. This is the ark. The ark isn't lost. I see documentaries all the time where they found the ark in Ethiopia, or they found the ark in Iraq, or they found the ark in Turkey, or they found the ark in a new dig that's way down underneath the western wall. It ain't there. These people are spinning their wheels. It's nonsense. The God who lives forever has told us where the Ark of the Testament is. It is seated next to his throne now. In Ezekiel, and I looked, and behold, chapter 10, verse 1, behold, in the firmament that was above the head of the cherubims that appeared over them. See, there's angels over the throne of God, even when he travels, as if it were a sapphire stone, appearing the likeness of a throne. And he spake unto the man clothed with linen, said, Go in between the wheels, even under the cherub, and fill thine hand with coals of fire from between the cherub, and scattered them over the city. And he went, and he's bringing the destruction and pronouncing the destruction. He goes, of Jerusalem. And he goes, now, and of course, Ezekiel's seeing this in a vision because he's in captivity in Babylon. He went out in the first captivity. He was a priest, and he went out at the same time. Daniel and the other seed royal were taken captive. And it says, now the cherubim stood on the right side of the house when the man went in, and the cloud filled with the inner court. Then the glory of the Lord went up from the cherub and stood over the threshold of the house. The house was filled with the cloud, and the court was full of the brightness of the Lord's glory. And the sound of the cherubim was heard even to the outer court as the voice of Almighty God when it speaketh. And what he does here, he's talking about this chariot that comes, and he takes away the glory of the Lord. And it's the same thing that Isaiah saw, the same thing that Daniel saw on the plain, the same thing that John sees overhead in heaven. And there appeared, verse 8, there appeared in the cherubims the form of a man's head under their wings. And when I looked, behold, the four wheels of the cherubims, and one wheel by one cherub, and another wheel by another cherub. You know, this fiery wheeled throne of God, the same thing that, good morning, Deborah, the same thing that Elisha saw when Elijah went up in the cloud. As for the appearance, the four had one likeness, as if the wheel had been in the midst of a wheel. And when they went up on their four sides, they turned not. And it's describing the function of this traveling throne of God that looks like the throne of God wherever he is. And then we have the living creatures that we found at the throne of God. This is one on each corner, verses 4 and 5 of Revelation. Remember the beast, the four living creatures that are on each corner post of God's throne. And it says that, and every one had four faces, verse 14. And the first face was the face of a cherub, the second was the face of a man, the third the face of the lion, the fourth the face of an eagle. And I saw this living creature when I was by the river at Kibar. And then it says in verse 18, then the glory of the Lord departed from off the threshold of the house and stood over the cherubims. The glory of the Lord leaves the temple, the house of God. Where was the glory of the Lord? It's between the cherubims where God said he would meet with Moses. Between the two, at one in each end of the mercy seat, that have their wings stretched out one toward another. And the cherubim lifted up their wings and mounted from the earth in my sight. They went out, the wheels were also beside them, and every one stood at the door at the east gate of the Lord's house, and the glory of the God of Israel was over them. It went away. It flew away. And where did it go? They carried it to heaven. The ark that Moses made, or Bezalel and Aholiab made in the wilderness, the ark of the covenant that God gave Moses the plan for, the pattern for, that's what's sitting next to his throne. The ark of his testament, which is a model of his own throne. It got there when the glory of the Lord departed from the house of the Lord, the temple in Judah, in Jerusalem in 586 BC. And it's been sitting next to the real throne of God ever since. Because John sees it in heaven. The ark is not lost. The ark is next to the very throne of which it is a model. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, the ark of the covenant. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. Thought I was going to turn to one more passage, but I think I will leave it there. God bless you all. See you tomorrow, God willing.